The microphone screeched feedback through the sanctuary as Dana's daughter Simone stood at the pulpit, her 28-year-old face twisted with theatrical grief. The congregation of 200 people leaned forward in the pews, hungry for scandal. Dana's hands gripped the armrests of her seat in the front row, knuckles turning ash gray as Simone's words echoed off the vaulted ceiling. "My mother is a drunk and a liar, and I can't protect her anymore." Good day, everyone. I am grateful you are here with me. Before we begin, I would really love to know where you are watching from. Comment your city below. Now let me tell me about something that changed my life forever. The air conditioning hummed through the vents, but sweat pooled at the base of Dana's spine, soaking through her navy dress. She pushed herself to standing, her kitten heels clicking against the polished floor. Every eye in the room followed her movement. The pastor, Reverend Thomas, raised his hand as if to intervene, but Dana was already moving down the center aisle, her breathing shallow and rapid. Simone's voice cracked through the speakers behind her. "Don't walk away from the truth!" Dana's fingers found the brass handle of the sanctuary door. She yanked it open with enough force to make the hinges groan. The June sunlight outside hit her face like a slap, blinding after the dimness of the church interior. Her sensible pumps scraped against the concrete steps as she descended, one hand shooting out to grip the iron railing when her ankle threatened to roll. The parking lot stretched before her, heat waves shimmering off the black asphalt. Her silver Honda sat in the third row, alone between two empty spaces. Dana's purse swung against her hip as she broke into an awkward run, her professional demeanor crumbling with each desperate step. Behind her, the church door banged open again. Footsteps thundered on the stairs. "Dana, wait!" The voice belonged to her sister Patricia, younger by 6 years and always the peacemaker. Dana fumbled her keys from her purse, dropping them once before her shaking fingers could grip the fob. The car chirped. She wrenched the driver's door open, the interior baking hot from sitting in the sun. The leather seat burned through her dress as she slid inside. Patricia reached the car just as Dana started the engine. Her sister's palm slapped against the window, leaving a sweaty print on the glass. Patricia's mouth moved, forming words Dana couldn't hear over the air conditioning blasting from the vents and the blood rushing in her ears. Dana shifted into reverse. The tires squealed as she backed out, forcing Patricia to jump aside. The Honda lurched forward, and Dana's hands strangled the steering wheel until her knuckles went pale. The church spire disappeared in her rearview mirror as she turned onto Maple Street, the engine growling when she pressed too hard on the accelerator. Her breath came in short bursts that fogged the inside of her sunglasses. She ripped them off and flung them onto the passenger seat. 3 blocks passed in a blur of manicured lawns and white picket fences. Her neighbor's world, pretty and perfect, mocking her with its Sunday afternoon serenity. She ran a red light at the intersection of Maple and Fifth, barely registering the honk of a minivan. Her phone buzzed in her purse with the insistence of a trapped wasp. Dana ignored it. The house appeared too soon, her cream-colored colonial with the black shutters she'd painted herself last summer. The Honda jerked to a stop in the driveway at an awkward angle, one wheel on the grass. Dana killed the engine and sat there, her chest heaving. Through the windshield, she could see the living room window, the curtains she'd sewn, the potted geraniums on the porch that she watered every morning. Her daughter's words echoed in her skull, amplified by the silence. "My mother is an alcoholic. She lies about everything. Please pray for her soul," said in that sweet, concerned voice while standing at the podium before 200 congregants. Dana's fist slammed into the dashboard, once, twice. Pain shot up her wrist. The front door of the house opened. Her husband Marcus stepped onto the porch, his tall frame silhouetted against the doorway. He wore his reading glasses pushed up on his forehead and held a coffee mug in one hand. His stance was casual, expectant, like he'd been waiting for her to return from service so they could discuss the sermon over lunch. Dana shoved the car door open and stumbled out. Her heel caught on the edge of the driveway, and she went down on one knee. Gravel bit into her skin through her stockings. Marcus set his mug on the porch railing and started down the steps, moving faster when he saw her fall. "Don't touch me." The words came out raw, scraped from somewhere deep in her throat. Marcus froze on the bottom step, his hand extended, but not reaching. His eyes, brown and confused behind his glasses, searched her face. Dana pushed herself up, feeling the sting of her scraped knee, the wetness of blood soaking into her torn stocking. She grabbed her purse from the car and slammed the door hard enough to rock the vehicle. She rushed past Marcus, catching a whiff of his coffee and aftershave. The porch steps groaned under her feet. Inside the house, everything looked exactly as she'd left it 2 hours ago. The breakfast dishes still sat in the sink. The morning newspaper lay folded on the kitchen table. Her reading glasses rested on top of her Bible, the one she'd forgotten to bring to church. Dana's legs gave out in the hallway. She sank against the wall, sliding down until she sat on the hardwood floor. Her purse toppled over beside her, spilling tissues and receipts in her phone, which was still buzzing with incoming messages. Marcus appeared in the doorway, backlit by the sunshine streaming through the open door. "What happened?" His voice was quiet, careful. Dana's laugh came out broken, almost a sob. She pressed her palms against her eyes, applying pressure until she saw stars. When she lowered her hands, Marcus had moved closer, crouching several feet away, with his elbows on his knees. Watching her the way someone might watch a wounded animal, wary and concerned. "She told them." Dana's voice cracked on the last word. "In front of everyone, during testimony time." Marcus's jaw tightened. He glanced away toward the family photos lining the hallway wall. Their wedding picture. The girls as babies. Last Christmas, everyone smiling in matching sweaters. His hand formed a fist against his thigh, then relaxed. Dana pushed herself up from the floor, her palms squeaking against the polished wood. She grabbed the doorframe for support, her knuckles whitening around the painted trim. The photos on the wall seemed to mock her now. All those frozen smiles, those carefully staged moments of family unity that felt like elaborate lies. She walked past Marcus without looking at him, her shoulder brushing against his as he stood. Her feet carried her to the kitchen on autopilot. The coffee maker still had half a pot from this morning, gone cold and bitter. She poured it anyway, her hands shaking so badly that brown liquid sloshed over the rim and pooled on the white countertop. The ceramic mug felt rough and foreign in her grip. Through the kitchen window, she could see Mrs. Patterson from next door watering her petunias. The elderly woman glanced toward Dana's house, then quickly looked away. Dana's stomach clenched. How fast had the news spread? Were people already calling each other, whispering about what they'd witnessed? The coffee tasted like acid going down. Dana set the mug on the counter, hard enough to chip the bottom edge. She gripped the sink's edge, staring at the breakfast dishes submerged in cloudy dishwater. A cornflake floated on the surface like a tiny life raft. Marcus's footsteps approached from behind, slow and measured. He stopped near the refrigerator, maintaining distance. Dana felt his presence like static electricity, raising the hairs on her arms. She couldn't look at him. Not yet. Not when her daughter's words still echoed in her skull like a recorded message playing on repeat. She planned it. Dana's voice came out flat, emotionless. She pulled a dish from the sink, grabbed the scrub brush, and attacked the dried egg yolk with violent circular motions. Marcus shifted his weight. A floorboard creaked. She heard him open the refrigerator, the suction of the seal breaking, then close it again without taking anything out. Nervous energy. He always fidgeted when situations spiraled beyond his control. Dana scrubbed harder, her wrist aching with the effort. The plate was already clean, but she kept going, needing the physical release. Soap bubbles climbed her forearms, soaking into the sleeves of her good church blouse. The lavender one she'd ironed so carefully this morning, back when the day had held promise instead of devastation. The phone on the counter buzzed again. Then again. A rapid-fire succession of incoming messages that made the device dance across the laminate surface. Dana watched it vibrate closer to the edge, wondering if she should let it fall. Let it shatter into a dozen pieces on the tile floor. At least then, it would match how she felt inside. Marcus reached past her and turned off the ringer. The sudden silence felt oppressive, heavy with everything they weren't saying. He stood beside her now, close enough that she could hear his breathing, slightly elevated. His cologne mixed with the scent of dish soap and cold coffee. "We need to call her." His words came out measured, controlled. Dana's laugh emerged sharp and brittle. She dropped the plate back into the sink with a splash that sent suds flying. Her hands gripped the counter edge again, white-knuckled, trembling with rage she hadn't known she was capable of feeling toward her own child. She finally turned to face him. Marcus looked older somehow, new lines carved deep around his eyes. His tie sat crooked, pulled loose at some point she hadn't noticed. He'd aged 10 years in the span of 2 hours. "Call her and say what?" Dana's voice rose, despite her efforts to control it. "Thank you for destroying me in front of 200 people?" She pushed past him, her hip catching the corner of the counter hard enough to bruise. The pain felt distant, disconnected. She moved into the living room where sunlight streamed through the bay windows, illuminating dust motes that danced in the air like tiny, mocking fairies. The armchair in the corner still held the impression of where she'd sat yesterday evening, reading. A normal Saturday night. The last normal night she'd ever have. Dana's phone began vibrating again from the kitchen. The sound carried through the house, a persistent, angry wasp, trapped and desperate to escape. She imagined church members typing furiously, their thumbs flying across screens, sharing their shock and concern, and barely concealed judgment. Her legs felt unstable again. She sat on the couch, then immediately stood back up. Sitting felt like surrender. She paced to the window, watching a cardinal land on the bird feeder outside. It pecked at seeds, oblivious to the destruction happening inside these walls. Marcus appeared in the doorway, his frame filling the space. He held her phone in one hand, screen facing away from her. His expression carried a weight she couldn't immediately read. "Your mother's calling!" Dana's stomach dropped through the floor. Dana's hand trembled as she reached for the phone, then pulled back as if it might burn her. Marcus held it between them, the buzzing growing more insistent with each passing second. Her mother's photo flashed on the screen, a picture from last Thanksgiving, smiling in her purple Sunday dress, the one she saved for special occasions. The buzzing stopped. Silence filled the room like water rushing into a sinking ship. Marcus set the phone on the coffee table with deliberate care, as though it might shatter. Dana watched it lie there, a small rectangle of black glass that connected her to a world she no longer recognized. Within seconds, it lit up again. Text messages appeared in rapid succession, the screen illuminating and dimming like a heartbeat. She lunged forward and grabbed it before Marcus could stop her. Her fingers swiped across the screen, unlocking it with muscle memory. The messages filled her vision. Her mother, her sister Cheryl, 3 different cousins, women from her book club, colleagues from the hospital where she worked as a nurse supervisor. Each preview line carried variations of the same theme. Is it true? Are you okay? We're praying for you. Dawn said. Dana's thumb moved without conscious thought, opening her mother's message thread. The words appeared in chunks, each one a separate stab. Baby girl, please call me. Dawn came by the house. She's crying. Says she had to do it. Says you've been hiding bottles. Says you fell at work last week. Why didn't you tell me you were struggling? The phone slipped from Dana's fingers and bounced once on the carpet. She stared at the place where it landed, watching it vibrate with another incoming call. The carpet beneath it was beige, practical, chosen 3 years ago when they'd renovated. Normal people made normal decisions about normal things like carpet colors. Her chest constricted. Air moved in and out of her lungs, but each breath felt shallow, insufficient. She pressed both hands against her sternum, trying to ease the tightness. Marcus moved toward her, but she stepped back, holding up one hand to stop him. She needed space. She needed to think. The walls of the living room seemed closer than they had moments before, the ceiling lower. She walked to the front door and pulled it open. June heat rolled in like a physical force, pressing against her skin. The neighborhood stretched before her. Identical lawns, identical houses, identical lives unfolding behind identical doors. Mrs. Patterson from 3 houses down was watering her roses, the spray from her hose creating tiny rainbows in the sunlight. Dana stepped onto the porch. The concrete felt solid beneath her bare feet, almost surprising in its reality. Everything else had taken on a dreamlike quality, surreal and distorted. A car turned onto their street. Dana's body tensed as she recognized the silver sedan, her mother's Camry, the one with the small dent in the front bumper from a grocery store incident last winter. The car slowed as it approached, then pulled into the driveway with careful precision. Her mother emerged first, moving with that deliberate slowness that came with 72 years and arthritic knees. She wore her church clothes still, a cream-colored suit with pearl buttons. Behind her, from the passenger side, Dawn stepped out. Dana's daughter looked small somehow, diminished despite being 31 years old and fully grown. Her eyes were red-rimmed and swollen. She held a wadded tissue in one hand. The sight of her created a war inside Dana's chest. Love and rage and betrayal all churning together until she couldn't distinguish one emotion from another. Marcus appeared behind Dana, his presence a solid warmth at her back. His hand touched her shoulder briefly, then withdrew. Her mother climbed the porch steps slowly, gripping the railing with white-knuckled intensity. Dawn followed 2 steps behind, her gaze fixed on the ground. "Inside," her mother said. Not a question, a command delivered in the same tone she'd used when Dana was 16 and had missed curfew. Dana's jaw clenched. She wanted to refuse, to stand her ground on this porch and force this confrontation into the open where the neighbors could see. Let them watch. Let them judge. What did it matter now? But her feet moved backward, carrying her into the house. Years of conditioning, of respecting her elders, of maintaining appearances, all of it pushed her back through the doorway. Dana Hill, Block 510. The living room shrank as the 4 of them filled it. Dana's mother claimed the armchair by the window, lowering herself with visible effort. Dawn hovered near the doorway, still clutching that tissue. Marcus positioned himself beside the bookshelf, arms crossed over his chest. Dana remained standing in the center of the room, her body rigid. Her mother pulled off her reading glasses and cleaned them with a cloth from her purse. The gesture was deliberate, designed to make everyone wait. Dana knew this tactic. She'd endured it her entire childhood. The prolonged silence before punishment, the theatrical pause before judgment. 40 people, her mother finally said, still polishing the lenses. 40 people heard your daughter cry in front of Pastor Williams. Dana's fingernails dug into her palms. She counted the indentations forming there, used the small pain to keep herself anchored. She stood up during testimony time, shaking, barely able to get the words out. Her mother replaced the glasses, hooking them carefully over her ears. Said her mama drinks herself sick every night. Said you lie about where you go, what you do, who you see. The room tilted slightly. Dana's vision blurred at the edges, darkening. She locked her knees to keep from swaying. That's not... Dawn started, but her grandmother's raised hand silenced her. You spoke your piece already, child. At church, in front of God and everybody. Dawn's face crumpled. Fresh tears tracked down her cheeks, cutting through the makeup she'd applied that morning. Her shoulders curved inward, making her look like a teenager again, instead of a grown woman with 2 children of her own. Dana watched her daughter cry and felt nothing. The numbness had spread through her chest, replacing the earlier rage with something cold and hollow. She wondered if this was what shock felt like, or if she'd simply run out of emotions to feel. Marcus cleared his throat. Mrs. Thompson, maybe we should... You stay quiet, Dana's mother snapped. This is family business. His jaw tightened, but he pressed his lips together and nodded once. Dana wanted to tell him to leave, to spare him from this spectacle, but the words wouldn't form. Her mother stood, using the chair arms to push herself upright. She crossed the room in 6 measured steps and stopped directly in front of Dana. The smell of her perfume, the same floral scent she'd worn for decades, filled Dana's nostrils. Are you drinking? Dana met her mother's gaze without flinching. No. Don't lie to me, girl. Not now. I'm not lying. Her mother's hand moved so fast Dana didn't see it coming. The slap connected with her left cheek, sharp and stinging. Her head snapped to the side. The crack of impact echoed through the room. Marcus lunged forward, but Dana held up one hand, stopping him. She straightened slowly, keeping her eyes locked on her mother's face. A hot flush spread across her cheek where the handprint was already forming. You don't get to do that anymore, Dana said. Her voice came out steady despite the tremor running through her legs. I'm 54 years old. Then act like it. Her mother's chest heaved with rapid breaths. Act like a woman who has sense. Act like a mother who cares what her child thinks of her. Dawn sobbed openly now, her back pressed against the wall. The tissue had disintegrated in her clenched fist, leaving white fragments scattered on the hardwood floor. Dana's cheek throbbed. She resisted the urge to touch it, to feel the heat radiating from her skin. Instead, she walked to the mantel and picked up the framed photo sitting there. Dawn's college graduation, both of them smiling in the sunlight. I quit drinking 3 years ago, Dana said, still studying the photograph. 3 years, 2 months, and 16 days. The silence stretched. She could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen, the tick of the wall clock behind her. I go to meetings every Tuesday and Thursday evening. I have a sponsor named Patricia who I call when things get hard. I've done the steps, made my amends, stayed sober through your father's death, and through losing my job at the hospital. She set the frame down carefully, aligning it exactly where it had been before. So when Dawn tells people I'm drinking myself sick, she's lying. When she says I disappear for days, she's lying. When she tells the whole congregation that I'm an alcoholic mess, she's telling half-truths and calling it testimony. But you were an alcoholic, her mother said. You can't blame her for... I've asked her not to tell people, multiple times. Dana turned to face Dawn directly. I've begged you to respect my privacy, to let me handle my recovery my own way, to stop using my past as your story to tell. Dawn's mouth opened and closed. No sound emerged. Her eyes were wide, pupils dilated with shock or fear or guilt. Dana couldn't tell which. You had no right, Dana continued. She took 3 steps toward her daughter. My struggle, my recovery, my business, not yours to share whenever you need attention or sympathy. I was scared, Dawn whispered. Her voice cracked on the last word. You weren't answering your phone, and I thought... You thought I was drunk. Dana stopped 2 feet away. So you told everyone before checking, before driving over, before doing anything except assuming the worst. Dawn's knees buckled. She slid down the wall until she sat on the floor, arms wrapped around her shins. Her whole body shook with the force of her crying. Dana's phone vibrated against the kitchen counter where she'd left it after her mother and Dawn departed an hour ago. The screen lit up with a cascade of notifications, 17 missed calls, 32 text messages, all arriving in the span of minutes. She picked up the device with trembling fingers, watched the numbers climb to 45 messages while she held it. The first text was from someone named Carol, a woman Dana vaguely recognized from the church's women's auxiliary. Praying for you in your struggle. The second came from Reverend Thompson himself. My door is open when you're ready to talk. The third, fourth, and fifth were variations on the same theme, concern wrapped in judgment, sympathy laced with distance. Dana scrolled faster, her thumb leaving sweaty prints on the glass. Someone had created a prayer chain. Someone else had organized a meal delivery schedule. A woman whose name Dana didn't recognize offered information about a Christian rehabilitation center in Georgia that had changed her nephew's life. The phone slipped from her fingers and clattered against the tile floor. The impact popped the battery cover loose, sent the device skittering under the refrigerator. Dana dropped to her knees, pressed her forehead against the cold metal of the appliance base. The condensation from the cooling coils made the floor beneath her sticky. Dust bunnies clung to her palms when she braced herself to stand. She made it to the bathroom before her stomach revolted. Nothing came up but bile and the half cup of coffee she'd managed that morning. The retching continued anyway. Dry heaves that pulled at muscles she'd forgotten existed. When it finally stopped, she slumped against the bathtub's porcelain edge, tasted copper and acid on her tongue. The doorbell rang at 3:47 p.m. Dana watched the digital clock on the bathroom counter tick forward to 3:48, then 3:49. The bell rang again, followed by knocking. A woman's voice called through the door. Not Dawn's, not her mother's. Someone older, with the practiced projection of a public speaker. Dana, it's Patricia Lewis from the church council. I brought some casseroles. Dana pressed her spine harder against the tub. The cold seeped through her shirt, made her skin pebble with goosebumps. I'll just leave them on the porch, honey. The green one needs to be refrigerated within the hour. Footsteps retreated. A car door opened and closed. An engine started and faded down the street. Dana counted to 300 before she moved, her legs cramping from their folded position. She left the casseroles where they were. By Thursday morning, her front porch had accumulated 6 more covered dishes. a basket of muffins wrapped in checkered cloth, and a potted plant with a card tied to its stem. Dana knew because she'd looked through the peephole at 6 a.m., unable to sleep, unable to stop her mind from cycling through every person who now knew her history. The card fluttered in the breeze, its message illegible from her vantage point, but its intent crystal clear. She called in sick to work. Her supervisor, a man named Leonard, who'd hired her 18 months ago, answered on the first ring. "I figured," he said. The background noise suggested he was already at the office. "HR wants to see you when you come back." Dana's grip tightened on the phone until her knuckles went white. "What for?" "Someone called. Said they were concerned about your well-being, about whether you were fit for patient care." The words hit like a physical blow. Dana sat down hard on the couch, the old springs groaning under her sudden weight. Her medical assistant certification, earned through night classes and weekend clinicals while maintaining her sobriety, hung framed on the wall across from her. She'd been so proud of that certificate, had shown it to Dawn, to her mother, to everyone who'd supported her through those grueling 18 months. "I haven't had a drink in 11 years, she said. Leonard's sigh crackled through the speaker. "I know, I believe you, but HR has procedures, protocols, you understand?" She understood. She understood that Dawn's testimony had metastasized beyond the church walls, spreading through networks of well-meaning gossips until it reached someone who knew where Dana worked. She understood that her daughter's need to process her fear publicly had cost Dana more than just her reputation. The call ended. Dana set the phone on the coffee table with deliberate care, afraid that if she moved too quickly, she'd throw it through the television screen. Her hands shook anyway. She clasped them together, squeezed until her short nails bit crescents into her palms. The knock came at 11:30 a.m., not a tentative tap like Patricia Lewis, but firm, authoritative, official. Dana approached the door slowly, each step requiring conscious effort. Through the peephole, she saw two people in business casual attire, clipboards in hand. The woman wore a county ID badge clipped to her belt. "Ms. Hill, I'm Julia Chen from Child Protective Services. This is my colleague. We need to ask you some questions about your grandson." Dana's knees buckled. She caught herself against the doorframe, splinters from the old wood pressing into her palm. The woman, Julia Chen, tilted her head, pen already poised above her clipboard. The motion reminded Dana of a bird examining prey. "May we come in?" The question wasn't really a question. Dana stepped back, her socks sliding on the hardwood floor. She'd mopped yesterday before everything imploded. The pine scent still lingered, mixing now with the sharp tang of her own sweat. Her armpits felt damp, her scalp tight. She gestured toward the living room, unable to trust her voice. Julia Chen entered first, scanning the space with practiced efficiency. Her eyes cataloged everything. The neat stacks of medical journals on the side table, the framed photos of Elijah on the mantel, the absence of liquor bottles or wine glasses. Her colleague, a heavy-set man who didn't offer his name, positioned himself near the window. He pulled out a tablet, fingers already typing. "How long has Elijah been living with you?" Julia settled onto the couch without waiting for an invitation. 3 years. Dana's voice emerged hoarse. She cleared her throat, tasted bile. "Since he was 2, his mother, my daughter Dawn, she needed help getting on her feet." Julia made a note. The scratching of her pen against paper filled the silence like static. "And you have legal custody?" The question landed like a fist in Dana's stomach. She pressed her hand against the wall, needing the solid surface to anchor herself. "Informal arrangement. Dawn and I, we agreed it would be better for Elijah to have stability while she worked through some things. What things? Dana's mouth went dry. Outside, a car door slammed. Children's voices rose and fell, playing in a yard somewhere down the block. Normal sounds. A normal Tuesday afternoon in a world that had tilted sideways. She thought about Dawn at 16, sneaking out. Dawn at 19, pregnant and terrified. Dawn at 23, dropping Elijah off for just a few weeks that had stretched into years. She's finding herself focusing on her ministry work. The colleague by the window made a sound. Not quite a laugh, but close. Julia shot him a look that could strip paint. She turned back to Dana, her expression professionally neutral. We received a report that you've been drinking heavily, that you've been intoxicated while caring for a minor child. The room tilted. Dana sat down hard in the armchair, the old springs groaning under her weight. Her vision narrowed to a tunnel. Julia's face at the far end. The blood rushing through her ears sounded like ocean waves, like drowning. She dug her fingernails into the chair's worn fabric, focused on the sensation, used the physical anchor to pull herself back. That's not true. The words came out steady, stronger than she felt. I've been sober for 11 years. I can provide documentation, breathalyzer results, blood tests, whatever you need. Julia wrote something lengthy. The scratching went on and on. Each stroke, another indictment. We'll need to interview your grandson, and we'll need access to your medical records, specifically any treatment history related to substance abuse. Dana's hands clenched on the armrests. The fabric bunched between her fingers, threads snapping. She thought about Elijah at school right now, probably in art class, the one he loved. He'd shown her his painting yesterday, a house with a red door and 2 figures holding hands. That's you and me, Grandma, he'd said, beaming. The picture was still on the refrigerator, held up by alphabet magnets. He doesn't know anything about this. He's 5 years old. We'll use age-appropriate questioning techniques. Julia stood, smoothing her slacks. Someone will need to be present during the interview. You can be there, or we can arrange for a neutral party. The colleague moved toward the door, already pulling out his phone. Julia handed Dana a business card, the edges sharp enough to cut. Contact information, case numbers, legal jargon in tiny print along the bottom. Dana took it, the cardstock trembling in her grip. We'll be in touch within 48 hours. In the meantime, I strongly suggest you secure legal representation. Julia paused at the threshold. And Ms. Hill? Don't leave town. Don't remove Elijah from his regular routines. Any deviation from normal behavior will be noted in our report. The door closed with a soft click that sounded like a cell door slamming. Dana sat frozen in the chair, Julia's card still pinched between her thumb and forefinger. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked. The refrigerator hummed. Somewhere above, footsteps crossed Mrs. Patterson's apartment. Dana's phone buzzed. A text message from the school. Reminder, Elijah's parent-teacher conference tomorrow at 3 p.m. Looking forward to discussing his progress. She dropped the phone. It bounced once on the carpet, screen still glowing with that cheerful exclamation point. Her stomach heaved. She made it to the bathroom just in time, retching into the toilet until nothing came up but bitter yellow bile. Her body convulsed, muscles spasming. Sweat dripped from her forehead, splashing onto the porcelain. When it finally stopped, she slumped against the tub, the cool cast iron pressing into her shoulder blades. Her certification hung on the bathroom wall, too. She'd hung copies everywhere as reminders, as proof. She stared at it now through watering eyes, the words blurring. All those night classes, all those weekends, All those years of waking up at 5 a.m. to study before her shift, of choosing recovery meetings over social events, of rebuilding herself piece by painful piece. Dawn had watched all of it, had seen her mother crawl back from the edge, had benefited from Dana's sobriety, from the stability it provided. And now Dawn's words, spoken in grief and fear and desperate faith, were dismantling everything Dana had constructed. Dana's hands shook as she pulled into the school parking lot, the steering wheel slick under her palms. 2 nights without sleep. Her reflection in the rearview mirror showed hollow eyes, skin ashen beneath its brown tone. She'd tried covering the shadows with makeup, but her trembling fingers had smeared foundation across her cheekbone, making her look bruised. The main entrance loomed ahead. Through the glass doors, she could see clusters of parents in the lobby, chatting while they waited for their appointments. Her throat constricted. Did they know? Had their children come home talking about what Dawn had said? She imagined whispers following her through those halls like ghosts. Her phone showed 2:58 p.m. She forced her legs to move, shoes clicking against the pavement. Each step felt like walking toward an execution. The September sun beat down on her neck, but her skin prickled with cold. Inside, the air conditioning hit her like a wall. The lobby smelled of floor polish and the cafeteria's lingering lunch odors. Principal Jameson stood near the main office, talking with a younger woman in a blazer. He glanced up as Dana entered. Their eyes met. His expression shifted, something between concern and discomfort, and he quickly looked away, turning his full attention back to the other woman. Dana's stomach dropped. He knew. The way he'd averted his gaze, the sudden stiffness in his shoulders. Someone had told him. "Ms. Hill?" A voice called from down the hallway. Mr. Chen, Elijah's teacher, waved from his classroom doorway. His smile seemed genuine, unmarked by suspicion. Maybe Principal Jameson hadn't said anything yet. Maybe there was still a chance to get through this meeting, to maintain some shred of normalcy. She walked toward him, conscious of every parent she passed. Their conversations continued without pause, without sideways glances. Perhaps she was imagining the principal's reaction. Perhaps paranoia was eating through her rational mind, like acid through metal. Mr. Chen's classroom was bright with student artwork covering every wall. Elijah's self-portrait hung near the window, his gap-toothed smile rendered in careful crayon strokes. Dana had helped him with that project, sitting at their kitchen table on a Saturday afternoon, showing him how to blend colors. "Please, have a seat." Mr. Chen gestured to a chair pulled up beside his desk. He settled into his own chair, opening a folder thick with papers. "Elijah is doing wonderfully. His reading scores have improved dramatically this quarter." Dana nodded, trying to focus on his words, but her attention kept drifting to the open door behind her, to the footsteps passing in the hallway, to the muffled conversations bleeding through the walls. Her spine pressed rigid against the chair back. Sweat gathered at her temples despite the cool air. "Are you all right, Ms. Hill?" She blinked. Mr. Chen was watching her, his expression shifting from professional cheerfulness to genuine concern. She'd missed something he'd said, lost several sentences while her mind spiraled elsewhere. "I'm fine. Just tired. Long week at work." The lie tasted like copper. Before he could respond, a knock interrupted them. Principal Jameson stood in the doorway, his tall frame filling the opening. Behind him, partially obscured, stood Reverend Thomas from Hope Eternal Baptist Church. Dana's heart hammered against her ribs so hard she wondered if they could see her chest moving beneath her blouse. "Ms. Hill, could I speak with you in my office?" Principal Jameson's voice carried that careful neutrality administrators used when delivering bad news. "Mr. Chen, we'll need to reschedule." Dana's legs barely held her as she stood. The walk down the hallway stretched into infinity. Each classroom door they passed felt like a witness. Other teachers glanced up from their desks, their gazes following the strange procession. The Reverend walked beside her, his cologne, something woody and expensive, making her nauseous. Principal Jameson's office smelled of coffee and paper. He closed the door with a soft click that sounded thunderous in the sudden quiet. Through the window behind his desk, Dana could see the playground equipment, the empty swings swaying slightly in the breeze. "Reverend Thomas came to see me this morning." Jameson remained standing behind his desk, not sitting, not offering Dana a seat. The power dynamic was deliberate and clear. "He shared some concerning information that affects your grandson's welfare." Reverend Thomas cleared his throat. "Dana, I felt it was my pastoral duty." "You had no right." The words erupted from her before she could stop them. Her fists clenched at her sides, nails biting into her palms. "What Dawn said wasn't true. I've been sober for 14 years. Your daughter seemed quite certain." The Reverend's tone carried that practiced sympathy she'd heard in countless church meetings, that soft concern that masked judgment. "She spoke about wine bottles hidden under the sink, about you driving Elijah while intoxicated. I have never driven drunk with my grandson in the car." Dana's voice rose, cracking. "Never, not once. This is insane. I can take a drug test right now. Blood test, urine test, whatever you want." Principal Jameson finally sat, folding his hands on his desk. "We're not accusing you of anything, Ms. Hill. But we have a responsibility to the children in our care. Given the allegations, and given that you're Elijah's primary caregiver while his mother is deployed." "So what? You're taking him from me?" Panic flooded her system, hot and chemical. Her vision tunneled. "Based on lies my grieving daughter told a church full of people? Without any evidence? Without any investigation?" "We're involving Child Protective Services." Jameson's words fell like stones. "They'll conduct a home visit, interview Elijah, assess the situation. Until then, we'll need alternative pickup arrangements." Dana's knees buckled. She caught herself against the edge of a filing cabinet, metal cold and solid under her grip. The room tilted. Somewhere in the back of her mind, she recognized the signs of a panic attack. The chest tightness, the dizzy sensation, the feeling of drowning in air. "Who's picking him up?" Her voice came out strangled. "We've contacted your daughter. She'll be here at 3:30. Block 910. Dana sat in her parked car outside the school, watching the entrance through rain-streaked windows. The storm had rolled in during the 40 minutes she'd been waiting, turning the afternoon dark and heavy. Her fingers drummed against the steering wheel, a nervous pattern she couldn't stop. The dashboard clock showed 3:28 p.m. At 3:32, Patricia's silver sedan pulled into the fire lane. Dana watched her daughter emerge, umbrella-less, walking through the downpour with that same rigid posture she'd maintained since James's death. Patricia's hair plastered to her skull. She didn't run. She moved with the deliberate slowness of someone who'd forgotten how to feel discomfort. Dana waited until Patricia disappeared into the building. Then she stepped out into the rain. The cold water soaked through her jacket immediately, plastering fabric to skin. She crossed the parking lot, each step splashing through growing puddles. By the time she reached the entrance, her teeth chattered. She pushed through the double doors, water pooling beneath her shoes on the polished floor. The hallway stretched empty, except for classroom sounds muffled behind closed doors. Dana moved toward the main office, leaving wet footprints. Through the glass panel, she spotted Patricia standing at the counter, signing papers while the secretary watched. Beyond them, through an interior window, Elijah sat in a plastic chair, backpack clutched to his chest. Dana opened the door. The secretary looked up. Patricia's pen froze mid-signature. "You can't be here," the secretary said, half rising from her chair. Dana ignored her. She moved past Patricia, entering the small side office where Elijah waited. The boy's eyes widened when he saw her. His lip trembled. "Grandma, did I do something bad?" His voice cracked. "They won't tell me what's happening." Dana dropped to her knees in front of him, not caring about the water soaking into the carpet. She took his small hands in hers. They felt warm and dry against her frozen fingers. "You didn't do anything wrong, baby. Nothing at all." Behind her, Patricia's voice cut sharp. "Mom, don't. Please don't make this harder." Dana turned her head. Patricia stood in the doorway, arms wrapped around herself. Her wet hair dripped onto the floor. The secretary hovered behind her, phone in hand. "I need you to tell them the truth." Dana stood, positioning herself between Patricia and Elijah. "Whatever this is, whatever you're going through, it ends now. Tell them you lied." Patricia's face crumpled. She pressed her fingers against her temples. "I didn't lie. I can't remember what's real anymore." The admission hung in the air. Elijah's small gasp broke the silence. Dana stepped closer to her daughter. "Then let me help you figure it out. But not like this." "Not by destroying what's left of our family." "I destroyed my family when I sent James to live with you." Patricia's voice dropped to a whisper. "He was supposed to be safe with you. You promised me he'd be safe." The accusation landed like a physical blow. Dana's breath caught. She understood then the hidden architecture of her daughter's grief. Patricia needed someone to blame, and blame required fault. Alcoholic, liar, neglectful. Labels that transformed accident into consequence, randomness into punishment. "I know," Dana said quietly. "I know you need this to be someone's fault. I know you need it to make sense." She reached for Patricia's hand. Her daughter flinched but didn't pull away. Dana held on, feeling Patricia's pulse rapid beneath her thumb. "But it wasn't my fault, and it wasn't yours. Sometimes terrible things just happen, and we survive them or we don't." Patricia's face twisted, tears mixed with rainwater on her cheeks. Behind her, the secretary shifted uncomfortably, phone still raised, but not dialing. "I can't," Patricia's voice broke. "I can't keep waking up. Every morning I open my eyes and for 1 second I forget, and then I remember, and I have to live through losing him again." Dana pulled her daughter into her arms. Patricia resisted for a heartbeat, then collapsed against her. Her body shook with silent sobs. Dana held her tightly, feeling the sharp angles of Patricia's shoulders, the way she'd lost weight, the trembling that started deep and radiated outward. "I'm sorry," Patricia gasped against Dana's shoulder. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry." Over Patricia's head, Dana met the secretary's eyes. The woman had lowered the phone. Dana nodded toward the papers on the counter. "Those need to be torn up," Dana said, "and you need to call off CPS." The secretary glanced at Patricia, then back to Dana. She picked up the papers, held them for a moment, then fed them into the shredder beside her desk. The grinding noise filled the small space. Patricia pulled back, wiping her face with shaking hands. She turned toward Elijah, who watched from his chair with wide, frightened eyes. "I scared you," Patricia said. "I'm sorry, honey." Elijah nodded slowly. Patricia moved to him, kneeling where Dana had knelt minutes before. She touched his face gently. "Your grandma is a good person. She didn't do any of the things I said. I was confused." "Because Uncle James died?" Elijah's voice came small. Patricia nodded. Fresh tears spilled down her face. Elijah reached out, patting her shoulder with the same gesture he'd used to comfort his uncle's dog when James first brought it home. Dana watched them, feeling something loosen in her chest. The storm hammered against the windows. Somewhere down the hall, a bell rang. Classroom doors opened. The sound of children's voices filled the building. Block 10 of 10. 6 months later, Dana stood in the backyard garden behind her house, fingers working soil around tomato seedlings. Early morning sun warmed her shoulders. Dew still clung to the grass, soaking through her canvas sneakers. She pressed each plant firmly into place, checking the stakes she'd driven in yesterday. The physical work steadied her hands, quieted her thoughts in ways nothing else could. The back door creaked open. Patricia emerged carrying 2 coffee mugs, moving carefully down the porch steps. She'd gained back the weight she'd lost, her face fuller now, color returned to her cheeks. She wore jeans and one of James's old flannel shirts, something she'd started doing in recent weeks. Not clinging to grief anymore, Dana had noticed, but carrying memory differently. "Elijah's eating breakfast," Patricia said, handing Dana a mug. Dana accepted it, dirt streaking the ceramic. Steam rose between them. She sipped, tasting cinnamon, the exact way Patricia used to make it before everything fell apart. Before James died. Before the church. They stood together in companionable silence. A cardinal landed on the fence, its red plumage brilliant against weathered wood. Patricia watched it, something peaceful in her expression that had been absent for so long. "The therapist wants to add another family session next week," Patricia said. Dana nodded, returning to her planting. She lifted another seedling from its tray, roots pale and delicate. "We'll be there." The sessions had started 3 weeks after the school incident. At first, Patricia had sat rigid, barely speaking. Dana had described what happened at the church, how the accusations felt, what it cost her. Elijah had drawn pictures while they talked, his crayon scratches filling uncomfortable silences. Slowly, week by week, Patricia had begun unpacking her own grief. The way James's death had twisted everything inside her, made her lash out at the one person who'd never left. Inside the house, Elijah's laugh rang out. He was watching something on the tablet Dana had bought him, one of those animal videos he loved. The sound carried through the open kitchen window, bright and uncomplicated. Patricia set her mug on the porch railing, descended the steps to kneel beside Dana in the garden. She picked up a hand trowel, began digging holes for the remaining seedlings. They worked in rhythm, mother and daughter, hands moving through earth that smelled rich and alive. "Mom called yesterday," Patricia said, focusing on her digging. Dana's hands stilled. She hadn't spoken to her own mother since the church incident. The woman had sided with the congregation, had called Dana's story exaggerated, had suggested Patricia was just under stress, and Dana should forgive and forget without demanding accountability. What did she want? To know if we'd come for Sunday dinner? Patricia's voice stayed neutral. She positioned another plant, patted soil around its base. Dana returned to her work, considering. The cardinal flew away. A delivery truck rumbled past on the street out front. "What did you tell her?" That we'd think about it. Patricia sat back on her heels, met Dana's eyes. But only if she apologizes first. Really apologizes, not that passive voice nonsense she usually does. Something warm spread through Dana's chest. She reached over, squeezed Patricia's soil-covered hand briefly. They returned to planting. By the time they finished, the sun had climbed higher, burning off the remaining dew. Elijah appeared at the back door, backpack already strapped on. Patricia had enrolled him in a summer science camp 3 neighborhoods over. Every morning, he bounded out to the car, chattering about experiments and field trips. Dana washed her hands at the outdoor spigot, water running brown with dirt. She dried them on her jeans, then headed inside to grab her keys. Patricia was already buckling Elijah into his booster seat when Dana reached the driveway. The drive took 15 minutes. Dana navigated familiar streets while Elijah narrated everything he saw. A dog walker with 5 leashes tangled together. Construction workers replacing a stoplight. Someone's entire living room furniture set out on the curb. Patricia half-turned in the passenger seat, engaged with his observations, asking questions that made him think deeper. At the camp drop-off, Dana watched Elijah race toward the building where other kids gathered. He'd made friends here, had stopped having nightmares about that day at school. The counselor said kids were resilient if you gave them stability, honesty, safe spaces to process fear. Back home, Dana changed into work clothes. She'd returned to the hospital 3 months ago. Same unit, same shifts. The first day back, colleagues had kept their distance, uncertain how to act. By the second week, things had normalized. Her supervisor had pulled her aside once, acknowledged what happened, made clear Dana's job was secure regardless of outside drama. Now she gathered her badge, lunch bag, water bottle. Patricia had started a new job too, working reception at a dental office. Different hours than Dana's shifts, but they made it work. Elijah stayed with a neighbor on overlap days, an older man whose grandkids visited weekends. Dana pulled into the hospital parking garage just before noon. She rode the elevator to the 4th floor, nodded to familiar faces in the hallway. Her badge beeped at the unit door. Inside, phones rang, monitors chimed, the constant hum of medical equipment filled the air. At the nurse's station, she checked the assignment board. 12 patients today, including 2 fresh post-ops. She collected charts, reviewed medications, began her rounds. The work absorbed her completely, hands checking IVs, eyes scanning monitors, voice soothing anxious patients and exhausted families. Hours passed in focused concentration. During her dinner break, Dana sat in the staff lounge, eating leftover pasta Patricia had packed. Through the window, sunset painted the sky orange and purple. She pulled out her phone, found a text from Patricia. Picked up E from camp. He made a volcano. Kitchen slightly messy. Love you. Dana smiled, typed back. Home by midnight. Save me some volcano. The evening stretched ahead. More patients, more emergencies, more lives depending on steady hands and clear thinking. Dana finished her pasta, tossed the container, returned to the floor. This was her life now. Rebuilt from wreckage. Not perfect, but honest. No congregation watching, no performance required. Just work and family and slow healing. She moved through the unit with practiced efficiency, present in each moment, solid in ways she hadn't been for years. Did you like my story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story. With love and respect.